The betting hall on Nexus Station buzzed with excited chatter from dozens of alien species. Holographic displays showed odds for various entertainment events across the galaxy. But tonight, everyone's attention focused on one particular arena feed. Captain Sarah Chan stood in the center of a makeshift fighting ring, her standard-issue Earth Navy uniform torn and bloodied, facing down a creature that made most sentient beings flee in terror. The Razor Claw stood nearly 3 meters tall, its muscular frame covered in midnight black fur that seemed to absorb light. 6 razor-sharp claws extended from each massive paw, each one capable of slicing through hull plating. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, and when it opened its maw, rows of teeth designed for tearing apart prey gleamed in the arena lights. This particular specimen was known throughout the Outer Rim as Grimfong, a creature so vicious that 3 planetary governments had bounties on its head. "Look at the foolish human," chittered Zexhai, a multi-limbed arachnoid whose species prided itself on tactical superiority. "She actually thinks she can wrestle that beast with her bare hands. Humans are even more primitive than we thought." Around the betting hall, various aliens nodded in agreement. The Korthak delegation, towering reptilian warriors known for their combat prowess, hissed with what passed for laughter among their kind. "We've seen human military reports," rumbled their leader, General Scarth. "They rely entirely on their crude projectile weapons and explosive devices. Without their technology, they're just soft, weak mammals." Dr. Velterra, a crystalline researcher whose species had achieved spaceflight when humans were still discovering fire, adjusted her translation matrix. "I've studied human physiology extensively. Their bone density is adequate for their gravity, but they lack the natural weapons of proper predator species. No claws, no fangs, no armor hide. They evolved as persistence hunters on their death world, but persistence means nothing against a razor claw's killing instinct." The arena feed showed Captain Chun circling the massive predator, her movements careful and measured. She'd somehow ended up in this situation after her diplomatic transport was attacked by pirates near the Korvaxi Nebula. The pirates, thinking they'd captured easy prey, had thrown her into their illegal fighting ring for entertainment. What they didn't know was that Sarah Chun had volunteered for every dangerous mission the Earth Navy offered, not because she was reckless, but because she understood something about humans that the rest of the galaxy had yet to discover. "The humans' fear pheromones are spiking," observed a sensory-class Etherian, whose species could detect emotional states through biochemical analysis. "Her stress hormones indicate she knows she's about to die." How pathetically primitive. But as they watched, something unexpected happened. Instead of backing away from Grimfang's intimidating display, Captain Shin stepped forward. The Razor Claw lunged with speed that should have been impossible to react to, its massive claws sweeping toward her torso with enough force to bisect a Korthak warrior. The aliens in the betting hall leaned forward, expecting to see the human torn apart in a spray of blood and bone. Sarah twisted her body with fluid grace, slipping under the massive paw by mere centimeters. As she moved, her hand shot out and grabbed the creature's wrist, using its own momentum to redirect the attack. The Razor Claw, expecting resistance, found itself suddenly off balance as its prey moved with the strike instead of away from it. Sarah's other hand came up, fingers extended, striking specific pressure points along the creature's forearm with surgical precision. "Impossible," breathed General Scarth. "The human just redirected a Razor Claw's attack. Their neural networks don't process information fast enough for such reactions." Dr. Velterra's crystalline form flickered with rapid calculations. "The mathematical probability of avoiding that strike through random movement is less than 0.003%. Either this human possesses reflexes far beyond their species' documented capabilities, or what?" demanded Zexhai. Several of his eyes focused on the arena, while others scanned his tactical databases. "Or they understand something about combat we haven't considered," the crystalline scientist admitted reluctantly. In the arena, Grimfong roared with fury and pain. The pressure point strikes hadn't seriously injured the massive predator, but they had done something no one expected. They had caused temporary numbness in specific muscle groups. The razor claw's left forepaw, which should have been repositioning for another devastating attack, responded sluggishly to its neural commands. Captain Chun didn't pause to admire her handiwork. As Grimfong twisted to face her, she was already moving again, this time toward the creature instead of away from it. Her approach defied every tactical algorithm the watching aliens could conceive. When facing a superior predator, the logical response was to maintain distance and use ranged attacks. Instead, the human was deliberately entering close quarters with one of the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. "She's committing suicide," declared a Vorthan military observer whose species had perfected aerial combat tactics over millions of years. "No amount of primitive courage can overcome the basic laws of physics. That creature outweighs her by a factor of 6 and possesses natural weapons she cannot hope to match." Grimfang's massive jaws snapped towards Sarah's head, an attack that would have crushed her skull like an eggshell. But, again, the human seemed to anticipate the movement before it fully began. She ducked under the snapping teeth and grabbed the creature's lower jaw with both hands. Instead of trying to hold the jaw shut, which would have been impossible given the strength differential, she used her grip as an anchor point and swung her entire body weight around, planting her feet against the razor claw's chest. The aliens watching gasped in collective shock. The human had just positioned herself in what should have been the most vulnerable possible location, directly in front of a razor claw's secondary striking limbs. Grimfang's rear claws came forward instinctively, seeking to disembowel this audacious prey. But Sarah was already moving again, releasing her grip on the creature's jaw and rolling backward along its torso. As she moved, her hands struck out repeatedly, hitting specific points along the creature's ribcage with controlled force. "She's targeting nerve clusters," Dr. Velterra realized suddenly. But how does she know razor claw anatomy well enough to locate them under thick fur while moving at combat speed? The question hung in the air as they watched Captain Chun complete her role and land in a crouch behind the massive predator. Grimfong spun around with surprising speed, but its movements were no longer entirely coordinated. The nerve strikes were beginning to take effect, causing minor disruptions in the creature's motor control. Nothing dramatic, just tiny hesitations and slight tremors that threw off its timing by fractions of a second. "Impossible," muttered General Scarth. "Those are precision strikes that would require detailed anatomical knowledge and years of training. We know humans haven't encountered razor claws before. Their species is native to the Corvaxi sector, which humans only discovered 6 standard months ago." Zexai's compound eyes tracked the human's movements with increasing confusion. "Her attack pattern doesn't match any documented human martial art in our databases. It's almost as if she's combining elements from multiple combat systems, adapting them in real time to an opponent she's never faced before." What the aliens couldn't see was the lifetime of training that had brought Captain Chun to this moment. Earth's military had learned hard lessons during humanity's expansion into the galaxy. Their first contacts with hostile species had shown them that human technology, while effective, wouldn't always be available. Soldiers needed to be prepared for any situation, including hand-to-hand combat with creatures far larger and stronger than themselves. Sarah had studied every known alien combat form, practiced against holographic simulations of dozens of predator species, and trained under masters of martial arts from every human culture. But more than that, she had internalized something that set humans apart from most other species in the galaxy: the ability to adapt and improvise under extreme pressure. Grimfong charged again, this time leading with its shoulder in an attempt to simply bulldoze over its elusive prey. The attack was crude, but effective. Even if the human avoided the immediate impact, the follow-up strikes would be impossible to escape. At least, that was how every tactical computer in the betting hall calculated the exchange. Captain Chun proved them wrong again. As the massive creature thundered toward her, she stepped forward and slightly to the side, her hands coming up to meet the charging shoulder. But instead of trying to stop or redirect the charge, she grabbed onto Grimfang's fur and allowed the creature's momentum to lift her off the ground. Using the Razor Claw's own movement, she swung herself up and around, ending up on the creature's back. "She's riding it," Zexhai said in disbelief. "The human is actually riding a Razor Claw." From her position on Grimfang's back, Sarah had access to the creature's neck and spine, areas where even a Razor Claw's natural armor was thinner. Her hands moved with practiced precision, applying pressure to specific points that would disrupt nerve signals without causing permanent damage. It was a technique adapted from human acupressure and Terran veterinary medicine, modified for alien physiology through careful study and intuitive understanding. The betting hall fell silent as they watched Grimfang's struggles become increasingly uncoordinated. The mighty predator wasn't being beaten into submission through brute force. It was being systematically shut down by someone who understood its body better than it did. The human's attacks were causing cascading failures in the creature's nervous system, each strike building on the effects of the previous ones. "How is this possible?" Dr. Velterra whispered, her crystalline form dim with confusion. "The human doesn't possess any natural weapons, yet she's defeating one of the galaxy's apex predators through technique alone." General Scarth's scaled hide rippled with the Korthak equivalent of deep thought. "Perhaps we've underestimated this species. Their approach to combat seems fundamentally different from any we've encountered." As they watched in growing amazement, Captain Shun continued her systematic dismantling of Grimfang's coordination. Each movement was economical, precise, and devastatingly effective. She wasn't trying to hurt the creature. She was trying to understand it. And in understanding it, she was learning how to defeat it. The Razor Claw's roars became increasingly frustrated as its body refused to obey its commands with the same precision as before. Its attacks, while still dangerous, were losing their deadly accuracy. The human on its back seemed to anticipate every movement, countering each attempt to dislodge her with fluid adaptations that turned the creature's strength against itself. "She's not just fighting," the Etherian observer said suddenly. "She's learning. Every exchange teaches her more about her opponent's capabilities and limitations. The human isn't relying on predetermined tactics. She's developing new ones in real time." The realization sent a ripple of unease through the assembled aliens. Most species in the galaxy had evolved specific survival strategies, superior technology, natural weapons, enhanced physical capabilities, or hive mind coordination. But humans seemed to possess something else entirely, the ability to face the unknown and adapt to it on the fly. In the arena, Captain Shun felt Grimfang's movements becoming sluggish as her nerve strikes accumulated their effects. She could sense the creature's growing confusion and frustration. It had never faced prey that fought back in this way, prey that didn't simply run or rely on superior firepower, but instead sought to understand and outmaneuver it through pure adaptation. Sarah knew she was reaching the critical moment of the engagement. Soon, Grimfang would either succumb to the accumulated effects of her attacks, or its predatory instincts would drive it into a final, desperate assault that might overwhelm even her defensive capabilities. She needed to end this confrontation before the creature's desperation made it truly dangerous. With careful timing, Captain Shun shifted her weight and applied a complex series of pressure points along the Razor Claw's neck and spine. It was a technique she had learned from human acupuncture masters and adapted through her study of alien physiology. The combination of nerve disruption and pressure point manipulation should trigger a temporary paralysis reflex, if she had calculated correctly. For a moment, nothing happened. Grimfang continued its increasingly unsteady movements, and Sarah began to wonder if her improvised technique would work on alien neurology. Then, the massive predator's legs suddenly buckled, and it crashed to the arena floor with a thunderous impact that shook the entire structure. The betting hall erupted in shocked exclamations and confused chittering. On their screens, they watched the supposedly primitive human slide off the now motionless razor claw and check its vital signs with obvious concern. Grimfong was breathing normally and showed no signs of permanent damage. It had simply been rendered temporarily unconscious by pressure point techniques that shouldn't have worked on an alien nervous system. Captain Chin stood up slowly, her uniform torn and bloodied, but her expression calm and professional. She looked directly at the arena's observation cameras and spoke in clear, measured tones that the universal translators carried to every corner of the betting hall. This creature will recover fully within 6 hours. I recommend proper medical monitoring and a high-protein diet during its rehabilitation period. The casual professionalism of her statement sent another shock wave through the watching aliens. The human wasn't boasting about her victory or demanding release from captivity. She was expressing concern for her opponent's welfare and offering veterinary advice based on her analysis of its physiology. Dr. Velterra's crystalline form flickered rapidly as she processed what she had witnessed. The human didn't just defeat the razor claw through superior technique. She understood its biology well enough to neutralize it without causing lasting harm. That level of adaptive learning and applied knowledge is unprecedented.